And it looks like we are live once again. Welcome back to the Manny Wolfe Show. We almost weren't able to do this because a hurricane touched down in what state do you live in, Kurt?
South Carolina. Yeah, tornado, right?
Tornado.
About a half hour or a half mile from us, we think. Yeah.
Jeez. So originally I was slated to have this interview with this man. And then he almost went off to see the Wizard of Oz, apparently. As a result, I jumped in and did a quick little solo thing, and now I have got him. So, Kurt, I'm just setting up my little shares that I do. So I'm boosting it up, setting up a watch party. There we go. And then sharing it to a group. All right. I am all about redistribution and repurposing.
Absolutely.
So, dude, nice to get to talk to you finally.
Yeah, no, it's I've watched you from afar, and I appreciate the invite. And you know, we talked a little bit, or we messaged back and forth about the importance of critical thinking and the lack thereof these days. And so, yeah, happy to be here.
Well, I'm super happy to have you because I think that the conversation about critical thinking has been pushed unceremoniously front and center.
Yeah.
Recently with coronavirus, just in case anybody out there doesn't know what we're talking about.
Right.
What do you think happens that allows people to sort of, get into the foxhole of their, I don't know what it is, conditioned beliefs? Right. What's the opposite of critical thinking?
Yeah, well, it could be, I don't know if there's an opposite. I think there's a number of things that go on. I think, you look back at history, and which you have to do to have some sort of perspective or context. And I see people saying, well, this is unprecedented. It's actually not. I mean, humanity has been through much worse. Yeah. You look at the Spanish flu. And it wasn't just attacking the elderly with underlying conditions. I mean, you had young in between. We fought a world war during the Spanish flu. Yeah. We ended up having a little depression, 1919, 1920, I forget the years there, but then like a decade of incredible prosperity. We moved forward. And I think we didn't have social media at that time.
Right.
We didn't have cable news.
Right.
I think that plays a part in it. This is happening during an election year. So people are retreating to different quarters that if you want to attend your local restaurant, you must be some Trumpian, selfish, evil capitalist pig. And it's like
booted thug.
Yeah, maybe I just want to go to the restaurant. But I think also if you stare at a graph or a series of graphs that are only about COVID, for days and days and days and weeks and months, you forget that there's a whole world out there bigger than COVID. And, it's like anything else. When you press over here, things happen over here. And some people, I think, want to put their head in the sand that over here ain't happening. Like people need to work, cancer, stroke, heart attack, livelihoods. So,
So, I don't often sort of really take the gloves off. As a rule, I find polarization to be a little bit sort of, it's not my cup of tea. Now, I understand the importance of it and the need for it. I think in this conversation with you, because I've been looking forward to it for a while now, I'm just going to let my flag fly. And we're on the same side, by the way. So it's not going to be a big contentious, Bill O'Reilly shootout.
Right. Yeah.
But I will start by saying, apparently I'm a conservative and I didn't know it.
Isn't that interesting?
I thought I was a card-carrying liberal. I see Gavin Newsom in my state, California, who I respected tremendously until this happened. completely shit the fucking bed on this thing. When he first came to do his daily news briefings about the situation, I was relieved because he was calm, he was confident, he was in charge. And I have seen something happen that I think is best summed up in, there's an interview going around where Tony Robbins interviews these two private urgent care clinic owners, the guys who went viral, and then got taken down off of YouTube and everywhere else for disagreeing with the WHO. Now, to me, I am not a blind devotee of Tony Robbins, but I will say this. He has a carefully curated brand. It's taken him 40 years to build.
Yeah.
The guy's not a lightweight, no matter what you may think of him. He's not stupid.
Yeah.
He was willing to interview these guys and flat out say that the WHO has been proven over and over again to be biased and to be wrong and to not have our best interests at heart. And he said in that interview, he said, I don't know what's happening with Gavin Newsom. I know Gavin personally, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's so easy for conspiracy theorists. They're just ejaculating all over themselves right now is what they're doing.
Right.
And right out in the middle of the street, right? And I get it because you need some kind of an explanation.
Yeah.
So let's start with this. What do you think from the 1,000-foot view is happening right now? Let's just go really broad with it to begin with.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I worked in politics and government and political affairs for decades.
Okay.
And in and around government, local, state, federal, worked on Capitol Hill. And the interesting thing I always tell people about conspiracy theorists is that having worked in and around government and the people who control government and pull the levers for that long, the notion that there are people who are smart enough to pull off most conspiracy theories is laughable. So there's that. Some things, I don't buy into this, that there's this overarching, maybe early on, I was saying like, something else has to be going on here, right? Something else has to be going on, because I can't believe we're completely shutting everything down. Like we're suspending any type of thinking about everything else. And we are the most technologically advanced society supposedly in the history of the world. And we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Yeah. With something that really, you line up 100 people, we can probably predict, if we're not politically correct and we're not afraid of having an actual real discussion of that 100, who's going to get really sick and who's going to die. Yeah. And remove them from that 100. Right. Now, me saying that, there are people who will say, no, didn't you see there was a 19-year-old who died in Cook County? I'm like, one 19-year-old. Well, if you were related to that 19-year-old, that would be right. And you could say that about the flu every year. You could say that about pneumonia. You could say that about herpes, whatever. Right. Right. And saying that isn't saying, oh, the flu is worse than coronavirus. It's saying to some people, it's a lot worse. The coronavirus is a lot worse than the flu. Yeah. I think that it depends level by level. Listen, I'm not a Trump guy. And I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not voting for Biden. People say, why aren't you voting for Trump? There's a number of reasons, but all I got to say is he let the lockdowns happen and he signed a $2 trillion stimulus. Yeah. Now, you could say, well, people are out of work. Okay, exactly. We should have let people work. We should have let the market figure it out. We should have gotten rid of all this red tape and regulations and let our vaunted tech community free to figure this out. The problem is a lot of them have their heads in the sand and act as if Professor Frank Fioretti, he's out in the UK, and we had a story. We interviewed him on Freedom Media Network, and he said, listen, the problem is that in this society, I don't even say he's a problem. He's just, this is the way it is. And he has a book about fear. We've come in this society to really define ourselves by our weaknesses and vulnerabilities, whereas in other parts of human history, we defined ourselves by our resilience. Right. The London Blitz. I'm reading this book by Eric Larson, a new book. I just started. I read the first chapter. And it starts off about the London Blitz, how the experts predicted massive death, destruction. They actually predicted, I don't know, tens of thousands of people going insane from the fear of the Blitz and the Nazis are coming. And so they wanted to let's capitulate. Let's avoid the worst that could happen.
Right.
They probably would have done it. Churchill came in and said, no, we're going to fight.
Yeah.
We're going to fight them on the beaches. We're going to fight them in the air. We're going to fight them in, and today it's like, we're going to hide from the beaches. We're going to hide from the air. We're going to hide from and experts time and again are proven wrong. If you only have a one-dimensional view of the world, it would be easy to say, and our only goal on anything is curing this disease.
Yeah.
Then okay, then that's your worldview. You would have to shut everything else down and only focus on that.
Right.
The thing is, there's more to this world than that.
Right.
There's people's livelihoods that are purchased with money. There's cancer, there's stroke. People aren't going and getting their chemo treatments. Hospitals are furloughing employees. And so when you ask what's going on, I don't believe there's I believe on a state-by-state basis, there's some governors who are doing this for certain political reasons.
Right.
Like Pritzker in Illinois is doing this to cover up 30 years of poor management and a $100 billion plus pension debt.
Yeah.
I don't think they're smart enough to get together and say, hey, there's this big overarching reason that we're going to do things.
Right.
But I do think that it has been fueled by people who are not able to think about more than one thing at a time.
Okay.
And that has led to one-dimensional thinking that has decimated people's livelihoods.
I would say in addition to that, let's don't deconflate, right? Because the idea that there's an overarching conspiracy and that we're marching into the new world order, and believe me, I have seen some lollapaloozas, man. I have just seen some, I normally don't unfriend people with differing opinions, but some of y'all are just batshit crazy. Okay, I'm just going to come out and say it. You guys, some of you are just gleefully insane. I got this one lady who's on about how Michelle Obama is transgender and she's been dating Barack Obama since they were both men and Bill Gates was born a girl. Like, it's just a free-for-all, right? So obviously I can't subscribe to any of that because one of the first things I learned when I got sober many, many years ago is think it through to the end. Right. You want to you want to do a line, you want to get high, think it through to the end. Are you okay with where it could go? And I think this through to the end. And there's just no way. First of all, even if it was 1% of the 1%, that's still something like 780,000 people, right? It's some vast number.
Right.
When was the last time you saw 780,000 people all agree tightly on anything?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We can use these little heuristics to help us, right? Yeah. Once again, heuristics come to our aid. They're not just for avoiding saber-toothed tigers and shit like that. But let's don't deconflate either. And let's remember that career politicians are opportunistic. Yeah. And so you'll see like I don't know what's motivating Newsom, but I will say this. I will say this openly and publicly. He has long since abandoned giving any justifications for keeping things closed down so stringently. He's just explaining the procedure day in and day out. And I'm over here going, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. How can you be so blithely dismissal of the economy? Yeah. I don't care how sort of revolutionary new age progressive thinking you are, because there's a whole story out there about how we need a different economy and the economy is fake. And there's that like really, really sort of, I think that's like a neoliberal kind of thing. Well, that's all well and good as a theory and as an argument and as a discussion to have over highballs at a swanky loft, right? Yeah. But here's the thing. To actually stop the economy, as we are seeing now, is tantamount to wiping out massive amounts of people. Yeah. So, and I'm going to ask for flat speculation here from you, because that's all you and I can really do. We're not pedigreed experts on this. We're just people who are thinking it through. Um, why do you think that so many people feel comfortable cherry picking this particular kind of death?
Yeah.
To champion as a cause. And now somebody's going to jump on here and go, well, it's because it's so you don't understand about asymptomatic, and it's we're going to hear that stuff, right?
Right.
But between you and I, let's think and speak as men do.
Yeah, I think that different people have different reasons. I think that people have agendas. I think that people listen, we live in a society of people who get offended and triggered by words. There's supposedly these Silicon Valley companies where you're not allowed to use violent words like "we crushed it" or like it's too militaristic because oh my gosh, words are going to hurt me. I mean, we have that. We have. You see it in the universities over the last several years where oh my gosh, I have a trigger warning. You have to fire that professor because he said something that's not nice. Right. So of course, the notion of talking about the fact of being resilient and the fact that some of these people are now saying, no, my goal is 0 deaths. It's like, well, how does that even work? Right. Are you never going to leave the house? Because by the way, if you don't leave the house, then you may cause a death by someone that you didn't buy a product or service. They have no idea how that works. But we also we can't even have. There was a story that came out in Reuters about that 75% of people in Louisiana who were dying were obese or morbidly obese.
Right.
Then I saw on Twitter, there was a whole movement of people saying, we can't say that. We're stigmatizing obesity. Well, you know what? If you get triggered because we talk about the word obesity, I grew up fat. I was made fun of. I was bullied, all that shit, right? Yeah. If you grow up that way, and if we can't have serious discussions about a health issue of obesity, then you are killing people. People are going to die. That's right. You also have the worldview of kind of the Bernie Sanders world that, that no one has to work. We can just sit back and no one has to work. Just catch up on your reading. And it's so interesting that a number of those people that we know that are white middle-class liberals who the breadwinner in the family is still working, is still going out into the community, by the way, to work because they're quote unquote essential worker. Right. They have a bunch of money in the bank. Right. This is the new white privilege. These are people who love to talk about white privilege and accuse others of white privilege. You know what the new white privilege is? Sitting at home, being a white liberal, middle-class liberal, having money in the bank, gainfully employed, and telling that family of 4 in the inner city, no, you are selfish for wanting to work. Right. You need to sit home and catch up on your reading. It's like you have ceased to employ that mushy stuff between your 2 ears. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that's true selfishness. I think that Big Pharma, I don't think they're behind this and have caused this, but I certainly think that I can see where some people believe that. But I also believe that never let a good crisis go to waste. And they're jumping on that vaccine bandwagon along with Bill Gates and Tony Fauci, and they're standing to make a lot of money to serve the public over something. Listen, if you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, throw that out for a little bit. Let's say you are pro-vaccine and you believe in vaccines. Talked to a nurse recently and we're like, you're pro-vaccine, right? So the flu's been eradicated, right? There's no more flu. She's like, well, no, it's about 50% effective. Well, right. Well, then how can you possibly say, like Governor Pritzker has said in Illinois, that we're not going to let people have, we're not going to bring back Lollapalooza. We're not going to allow these certain things until there's a vaccine. That's completely asinine. I mean, the flu is still here. It's 50% effective. And by the way, they seem to be wrong every year about the right vaccine for that strain of flu. So all these different pieces and agendas.
And that's what it is, Kurt. I think that's getting the heart of it, right? What we're seeing is what I would maybe anecdotally call a perfect storm of agendas, a perfect storm of opportunistic opportunity, resources, and moment in time.
Yeah.
Like with Big Pharma. Now, I've watched, like I'm sure many of us have, I would say if you can employ critical thinking at even a sort of a freshman in college level, and you watch one commercial for something like one of these psychotically named drugs, right? Like I don't know, Prozac.
Right.
Now, back when I was doing drugs, you'd laugh at something called Prozac, right? But then they give you this whispered, really quick, like little disclaimer about how it can cause like hallucinogenic nightmare diarrhea and all this stuff. And it's like, what the hell is actually happening here?
Right.
But because it's rolled out in such a professional manner and in such a way, we just sort of, it just sort of somehow gets right past us. I will go on record as saying, by and large, I think big pharma is as close to evil as any sort of industry gets. I would say they are, while they do some things that arguably help, like I sort of think of Western medicine is for acute, non-Western medicine is for prevention.
Yeah. I would agree. I think the amount of money that they pour into funding our medical schools, you have doctors who have grown up who can't think outside of prescribing a pill.
Right. Yeah.
And that's dangerous because we have a society that is conditioned to want an easy button for everything.
Right.
And so, things like lifestyle choices are not even considered because, the amount of people now who are on, and listen, if you're listening to this and you have to be on it, and I'm not a doctor, right? But I'm someone who has undergone, I read about it in my book, severe anxiety attacks so bad where I thought I was going to die. I thought an alien was going to come out of me and I wanted to die. Mm-hmm. Doctors said, well, you have irritable bowel syndrome. No, I had anxiety attacks and was having a massive physical effect. Put me on a drug, said, here you go. I had crazy side effects from it. I got off it. I didn't want to be on it. But you listen to someone like a Dr. Andrew Weil talk about the amazing ability of your mind and body to heal itself if you give it the chance. But also, if you read up on placebos and you look at the incredible numbers, I was reading on some of these antidepressant drugs, like 50 to 75% effectiveness from the placebo because your body releases the endorphins and the chemicals and the dopamine. But now you see parents putting college kids because they're stressed about midterms. Well, we got to put you on drugs. I put up with that. It's called stress. It's called being a human. It's called meditation. It's called working out. It's called not eating shit, cutting down on sugar, getting sleep, all those things. Yeah. And so we have such a drugged up society on legal drugs, right? Yeah. Because everyone wants an easy button. So that when something like this comes up, you see people not even changing. They're more mad about the two 20-year-old kids or 15-year-old kids playing soccer in the park because they're going to cause overcrowding at the hospitals. And they're sitting at home, fat and happy, getting fatter and less happy during the lockdown, drinking, smoking, but it's everyone else's problem. Right. We have to have the ability to discuss lifestyle choices, what's called gene expression. Just because you have a gene because your dad was fat and had a heart attack doesn't mean that you automatically need to go on a drug and condemn yourself to a life of that. Right. Change your life. Have these lifestyle choices. I think all of that is underlying and a foundational problem we're seeing with this epidemic. Yeah. Because we're just going to sit at home. You shut up, sit at home until there's a vaccine. Big pharma will save us. Right. And that type of attitude is that's not critical thinking, first of all. Yeah. And it's dangerous to our health.
Irregardless of a pandemic or not, right?
Right.
I think that I just had a thought as you were saying those things. I think that conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theories, first of all, I think it's doing a huge disservice to the general narrative and the general conversation. I think it's doing a profound disservice. It's like putting a triangular wheel on one side of the car. Yeah. So, but, and I think it's interesting because I believe that those people think that they're thinking for themselves, right? There's that old maxim that the crazy guy doesn't think he's going crazy. He thinks he's getting more sane.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so here's what I think might be happening. I think that they're actually confusing intellectual laziness and critical thinking laziness for acuity and being critical thinkers, right?
Yeah.
Because here's this nicely laid out, never mind that it makes Lord of the Rings look plausible.
Right.
But it's so nicely laid out. And all I have to do, and I'm not even ever aware I'm doing it, is suspend disbelief in all these key places. And then suddenly it's like this whole world opens up to me of, oh, of course, I get it now. Yeah.
Totally.
It is the 5G Wuhan bats in concert with the aliens that, because, I mean, let's face it, the government just admitted there were aliens, and on it goes.
Yeah.
And so I think that there might be a lot of opportunistic entities, from mayors to politicians to big pharma, et cetera, all preying on the moment at the same time, mixed with this sort of, God, I'd almost call it an indoctrination of incuriosity, of laziness, mental laziness, right? And God, I mean, I'm sort of having an epiphany right now as we're talking that I think this explains a lot of what we're seeing as the response. Plus, let's face it. Let me rephrase that. Not let's face it. Do you agree that we're sort of pumped full of fear on a daily basis?
Yeah, 100%. I think in the news and everything, we don't allow the news in our house. I see it because I used to be addicted to the news. We know in 2012, Facebook did that experiment where they ramped up your attitude or ramped it down depending on your news feed, and they leaked that. It's interesting because, on one hand, I think a lot of these conspiracy theories, you'd have to find people smart enough to carry them out. And I haven't found that yet in government, having worked there.
Yeah.
On the other side, I think there are opportunistic people who don't have people's best interests at heart.
Yeah.
what I tell my wife is, listen, I don't buy anything. If I see the story on one hand showing boom, 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 I don't buy it until I look for myself. And on the other hand, I don't buy it either. I think the interesting thing is, though, there's some truth in the middle to it. And so on a number of these things, I once worked as a lobbyist in the food industry, and I sat in a meeting where we're told it's science. The food pyramid is science, right? And each lobbyist for each industry basically took it upon themselves. They were going to write the different parts of the food pyramid. Now, the people who got the most subsidies, you eat most of that according to science. How does that work out, right? Bread, So I also know that a lot of things go on. It's interesting because there are, like, Dr. Rashid Buttar, talks about Tony Fauci and this, that, and the other thing. And what I was saying is, listen, I may be conditioned to kind of believe that. I'm not crazy about Tony Fauci. He has a track record of, when you look at things he said during the AIDS epidemic, all this, right? But I'm like, dude, Dr. Rashid, show me the documents. Show the proof. Otherwise, I ain't going to believe you. I may say, I don't trust that guy.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, I don't trust Bill Gates. I don't like him. I haven't liked him since he thought that he could just spend all this money to put Common Core into our schools and move around children like pawns.
Yeah.
I think, to me, Bill Gates is like the Bond villain, or he's like Thanos, right? He thinks he's so smart, he can move humans around like pawns, right? Like there are computer programs and things will happen. I think that can be dangerous. I'm not reflectively anti-vaccine, but right now you see people who took the vaccine, polio's making a comeback in India. People have died, there's those types of things. I don't buy into conspiracy theories, but I do buy into, I don't believe in these super smart people just moving humans around like pawns.
Sort of having carte blanche because of what they've achieved financially and with their
I do. But I do, YouTube, Facebook, people are automatically considering certain things as conspiracy theories, like consume more vitamin D, get more sunlight. It's not good to be cooped in inside all day, and all of a sudden, like, that's conflated as a conspiracy theory. It's like, no, we know that to be true.
Right. Yeah.
5G and some of the 5G stuff that's out there is like, okay, I don't believe in that. But listen, I do believe overall, not just 5G. We won't put our Wi-Fi in our bedroom where we sleep. I don't put my phone in. I think there's something with some sort of high-pitched noise and frequencies affecting sleep, affecting us. I think those things, I think that's more of just a natural health issue.
Yeah.
Do I think that 5G is causing the coronavirus and all that? I quite honestly, I don't even read it. I have no idea. But I do think maybe we should look at a lot of the shit that we're putting in our bodies, whether it's stuff around us, whether it's cell phones to our ears all the time. You know, I'm big on blue light after 5 o'clock. It affects your sleep. So I think there's conspiracy theories, and I think there's always just enough in it that you should just let them be and let them do their thing. Because the other thing is, the minute you start censoring them, the minute that gives credence.
Right.
Which is why I think YouTube and Facebook and all them are just stupid. Plus, I'm just radically pro free speech. And it's like,
same here.
Let it all out there. Let it all out there, you know, because one thing in 10 may make it through that might actually be true.
Yeah.
And then, but I agree with you on a lot of it. Like, you know, Bill Gates is, what's the other thing, that this entire thing was cooked up because while we're all locked at home, there's a global pedophilia ring, including Tom Hanks and others that are going to be arrested. It's like, come on, right? Like, no one's smart enough to do this. That's what people don't understand. Right. I've been in and around government.
Yeah. and I just feel like it begs the question, are you really sitting at home alone believing, for instance, that Tom Hanks is affiliated with a global liberal elite pedophilia ring that is somehow now connected to, by the way, Epstein didn't kill himself, 5G, right?
Right.
I mean,
and he may be a pedophilia and may have hung out with Epstein, and a lot of people do bad things, rich people, and some of them are doing bad things. I don't want to, by the way, I'm not anti-rich person, but the Epstein crowd was rich people who were bad people. Not saying they're not part of that, but the connection to coronavirus and everything that's going on, I don't know. If you really think that someone, and Trump was elected and the election was fixed simply for all of this to happen, show me the results. Show me something besides a strongly vouchsafed belief in your gut. Right.
Yeah. And I saw something that I really liked, and I'm going to paraphrase it here, and B, I think it's relevant to this. This was a PhD scholar or something. And it went something like, oh, so you researched it, right? And then they go on to say, well, did you compare peer-reviewed studies? Did you hold it up to the rigorous laws of logic fallacies, and on and on and on? And of course, or did you just watch a few videos that said what you already believed? And are you calling that research? What do you think is the tendency within us? What do you think the reason is within us to just sort of take things to that 11 on a scale of 1 to 10 level of in sort of intensity? Like what you're talking about here is you're talking about there being potentially some truth in even the craziest things, but that requires you to go, okay, maybe I don't agree with all of this part and parcel, you know, but maybe I can look at it and sort of sift through it and see that some stuff sort of passes muster, or at least passes the sniff test. Right. Why do you think we have such a hard time doing that? Why do you think we just go straight to fifth gear with everything?
Yeah, I think there have been enough things that have come to light and just enough kind of government scandals and cover-ups that we're conditioned to believe the worst or go there. Plus, there's just ineffective communication, right? You know, things Bill Gates has said in the past, his quotes were used to make it seem like he wanted to sterilize the world through vaccinations.
Right.
Now, I think I know what he was saying, but when you say stupid things and then you spend $1 billion to do certain things,
yeah,
there been government cover-ups and screw-ups? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think that there have been, when it comes to health, it's less of a outward conspiracy and more of a let's take advantage of stupidity and make everyone think that without drugs they're going to die.
Yeah.
If we create, I think the heart of this is creating a nation of victims on everything, on every single thing. You know what? You're out of shape. That's not your fault.
Right.
Here's a drug.
Yeah.
You can put that across the board on anything, money, health, politics, whatever it is. And when you create a nation of victims, victims are more easily likely to give up critical thinking because victims don't really have a clear sense of meaning and vision. Randy Gage, best-selling author, I interviewed him, and he said, people join gangs, cults, other things when they don't have a lack of sense of meaning, and someone comes to them and says, do you want some meaning? We'll give it to you.
Yeah.
I think that's why you see people who become addicted to, whether on the right or the left, MSNBC or Fox News. And they sit there for they wake up in the morning and they don't have to think.
Yeah.
All they can say is, what's Hannity going to tell me to think? What's Maddow going to tell me to think? And so they don't apply that critical thinking necessary. So Hannity's off saying one thing about everything that's going on in the world, and Maddow's going out saying anything. And so they're conditioned to think it because they're easily led because they lack a sense of meaning, and it's easy for others to apply it to them. So that victimhood, that lack of meaning, more easily allows you just to just believe what's spoon-fed to you. Sure. And I think, what's dangerous, and by the way, that leads us to just blindly trust experts. There are so many, if you're a doctor listening to this, you're great, you're wonderful, right? I've met doctors, and we've known doctors who've given such horrible advice.
Yeah.
We deify these doctors. The average doctor may have had less nutritional training than the average person in many cases. Yet you just had a heart attack. You need more bread in your diet. It's like, what are you talking about? And so we talk about peer-reviewed studies. The danger there is that who was funding the study? Peer-reviewed studies, who are the peers who are reviewing them? Right. You look at some studies done by universities funded by big pharma, where it's very easy to weed out the people most likely to respond to placebos. Yeah. Randomized testing ain't so random anymore. Right. And that's when you have to apply the ability to use common sense with data, which is why we, in this country, you have a civilian as the leader, the chief executive. Yeah. You don't have military commanders because military commanders are experts in war. But in the end, civilians apply. The economists you have a cabinet around you, right? My problem with what's been going on is that Trump said, here's Fauci, that's it. He is the one voice we're going to listen to. That's it. And by the way, any other doctor or epidemiologist who comes forth saying, whoa, we can't shut down the economy, the data is wrong, has been labeled a conspiracy theorist. Right. Meanwhile, you have someone like Fauci. Fauci may be a great guy. He's one guy. Yeah. He's not an economist. Right. So you push over here and a leak starts over here, and you have to have that broad view. And so, it's funny, all the people who are saying, listen to the expert, Fauci's the expert, listen to the expert. Right. What were they doing in the lead up? What were you saying in the lead up to the Iraq war? Yeah. There was a lot of experts. I could show you a lot of experts who said weapons of mass destruction, go to war. Colin Powell, expert, showed the pictures, right? Yeah. And by the way, I'm not saying this. What I'm saying is it's the hypocrisy of a lot of people who said the experts were wrong there, and now we're saying blindly trust the experts because they have a certain degree and have a certain it comes down to critical thinking, common sense. By the way, your critical thinking may lead you to a different conclusion than my critical thinking, that's fine.
Yeah.
But at least you've employed it.
With approaching 8 billion people, we're not going to have consensus.
Right.
Right. And I'm not, I don't think of myself as the kind of guy that would even say things like I'm about to say, but that's kind of like the beauty of the original intent of the American experiment.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, can we build a place where we can all sort of, and I realize I'm opening the door even saying this because we didn't all get an equal chance to thrive, but moving that aside for a moment, right? The idea that was presented was this society where we'd have an equal chance to thrive. And I don't need to be reminded of the 3/5 of a man and racism and slavery and those abominations. Just so that we're clear, it's a fucking black mark on our soul as a nation. Okay, moving on. But that was the idea. It was an experiment. It was, can we acknowledge that we'll never have consensus?
Yeah,
and still move forward.
Right.
Right. And I think that, God, there was so much in what you said that I'm like, oh, try to remember that. Try to remember that. But
I get going. You wind me up and I keep going,
Hey, I'll be honest with you. I needed to take the gloves off like this with someone and just really speak my mind. Let's just move forward and what upshot or positive. So let me lay the table here, set the table. I believe that at the scale of humanity, at the scale of populations, and I think this for the individual too, but we don't move forward in a straight line. We move like a pendulum, right? But in a trending direction. I thought Obama was one swing of the pendulum. I think Trump is another.
Right.
In spite of everything I thought I believed, I'm seeing some value in both of these guys now. Mm-hmm. Which is just flabbergasting to me because it made me have to question all of my deeply held but not sort of fleshed out beliefs.
Right.
But what do you see? Do you agree that humanity trends upward in terms of quality of life, length of life, just in general from, let's say, 1,000 years ago till now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So given that,
yeah,
and I heard, what's that? There's an entrepreneur whose whole focus is on, I'm drawing a complete blank. His name's Alex. He wears the funny glasses. Anyway, he gave a really, really solid argument in one of his masterminds about how humanity always trends toward higher democracy, higher levels of democracy. So if we're trending up, and this is one of the pendulum swings, but a really intense one, what do you see as some of the potential positive outcomes of this?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I had an economist on my show last year and about the fact that everything is getting better. Yeah. If you just watch the news and social media pre-pandemic, right. You would think that violence is on the rise. It's not. Right. You would think that poverty is rampant, lowest levels of human poverty in history. You would think that the environment is getting worse, right? Right. It's actually not. In the 70s, try to walk through downtown Pittsburgh. Yeah, right. Whoa, so man. You look at that data. Now, saying that though is not doing a disservice to people who are victims of violence or poverty, right? Right. But instead of having a scarcity mindset saying everything is horrible, everything's getting worse, which is untrue, you have an abundance mindset that wakes up and you say, listen, world is pretty damn good and it's getting better. Yeah. What could we do to make it more awesome? Right. That acknowledges that, hey, there's some things we got to fix, right? So seeing that, yes, I believe we trend upward. I believe humanity is trending upward. I think there are certain things where, yes, the pendulum swings, right? On the surface, the pendulum between Obama and Trump has swung back and forth. If you really, 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 really step back, though, and you look how big, other than rhetoric, how big has it really swung? Well, I don't know. I think the biggest threat to the existence and future of the United States is our debt. Well, That pendulum just keeps not swinging.
Right.
The trajectory is overall bad, right?
Yeah.
Do I think we can figure it out? Yes. I think that humanity has the ability to solve and get past any problem, any challenge that faces us. If we allow it to be unleashed. And right now, I don't think we are. That's the problem.
This is my fundamental belief too, Kurt. That is, I'm so glad you said that. That is one of my most fundamental beliefs.
Yeah.
You can look back through history, and even though history is written by the winners, you can see that in every significant era of human evolution, we have been on the precipice of utter disaster and complete loss.
Yep, absolutely.
And yet, we're fucking rocking.
Yeah. Yeah. When you allow it to happen. I mean, in the opening days of this, it's funny. I was reading Stephen Kotler and what's his name?
Jamie Wheel.
No. Kotler and he's with the X Prize dude. He wrote Abundance.
Yeah.
Bold,
he was a co-writer of Rise of Superman and Stealing Fire, right?
Yeah. And they were reading about it's called The Future is Faster Than You Think. And they had this book and it talked about all these incredible things that are moving humanity forward. And then I read it, I finished it as this started, and it's like, all right, we're going to have flying cars. We're going to have all this cool stuff, but you can't manufacture a test that works. You can't manufacture masks. You can't manufacture. And what happened was government regulation and red tape early on, which have been around forever, ostensibly to protect us. Okay. Like one regulation, nurses in New Jersey who are qualified in New Jersey can't cross state lines to help hospitals in New York.
Right.
Oh, that's to protect people. No, it is to protect the profits of the Association of Nurses in New Jersey.
Right.
Because my wife's a speech language pathologist, right? She didn't pay her dues for a few years. So what did she have to do? She had to pay a whole bunch of money and take like a 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour test and study for it. Well, because you didn't pay your dues, you were somehow not as smart.
Yeah.
So these types of rent-seeking, anti-freedom, anti-innovation laws and red tape, prevent us from having true innovation. It's like the school system. You go around, is the school system broken? Yes. Well, let's fix it. Whoa, no. Why? Because we have to keep certain teachers employed and the janitors that work at school employed. Right. So all of that protectionism gets in the way of actual innovation.
Absolutely.
So something like this. So getting to your actual question, which is what's going to happen? Well, I think some things are going to crumble. We have hurricanes here regularly. What happens? The dead branches get pruned.
Right.
Now, for those of you who need trigger warnings just for getting up in the morning, I'm not talking about coronavirus as pruning weak people and obese people and elderly people. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is you have certain restaurant chains that are going under. You see a lot of companies that are declaring for bankruptcy now. You know what? They've been limping along for a while and they're gone. They couldn't survive this. Right. You see other innovative companies that are stepping forth, figuring out how to get it done. Yeah. You know what? They're going to make it happen. Yeah. You see restaurant employees who are out of work, who are not going back to work because they're getting paid more by the government to not work. Yeah. So I just talked to someone whose daughter just got a job at a restaurant. Well, how'd that happen? Well, you know what? The restaurant's like, fine. If you don't want to work, we're going to hire new people. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with like unemployment. Does it go from 14.9 down to 10 and stick there because there's people who just are getting paid too much by the government? They don't want to go back. Right. But what about recent grads? They have opportunities. The opportunities are there. I think radically, we need to look at this. We need to get government out of the way. We need to let innovation happen. We need to get back to looking at the resilience of people. Yeah. People who are weak up here. Yeah. People who are sitting in the corner sucking their thumbs saying, people are going to die. People are going to die. Therefore, we can't do anything. We have to stay at home. They're going to learn what pain is really about. They're going to learn what our grandfathers and fathers went through in the Great Depression. People went through during the London Blitz. A couple years ago, last year, someone told me, we were talking about people getting so up in arms about some choice of words. I don't even know what you're talking about, but it's back to this trigger warning bullshit, right? Yeah. And he said, when these are the biggest problems we have, we need bigger problems.
Exactly.
Well, now we have bigger problems.
Yeah.
there's going to be people who survive it and thrive, and there's going to be people who are caught in the corner with trigger warnings, crying and upset because the world is mean to them. You know?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. The fact that an entitled, self-righteous, effete student can get a professor fired,
right, because
of this trigger warning BS means that we need to find problems and things to push against are part of the human experience.
Yeah. And
let's face it, not a lot of saber-toothed tigers running through the streets anymore.
Right.
There's not a lot of real, true, visceral problems. And I think of Steven Pinker's work when you talk about society trending upward like that. I mean, he proves it irrefutably.
Right.
Unless you don't trust the math.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I agree with you too, that that the people that are sort of like I feel like this is in a very real way a forced up leveling of, I'm going to say, a critical mass of the population. Now, it's not going to take everyone, because some people are going to insist, right, in living in the story they have for themselves, the victim story.
Right.
But as humanity trends upward, so does what we might call our collective consciousness, right? And I don't want to open the door to too much new agey stuff, but collective consciousness is a thing.
Yeah.
If we look
100%.
at 500 years ago, collective consciousness was not really thinking about the best ways to create a new hybrid education system.
Yeah.
Right. They were thinking about things like, are we all getting our heads cut off today? Yeah. So the collective consciousness was at a different level. And so I do think it's, and I also think that in the individual experience and in the collective, population level experience, most important lessons don't come without struggle in the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Because then you don't really learn anything from it.
Right.
Charles Fillmore was writing 100 years ago about collective consciousness. Eric Butterworth kind of picked up the mantle and wrote about that, in terms of, you look at depressions and you look at wars and you look at even sicknesses have happened when everyone, that collective consciousness comes to believe, well, there's nothing we can do. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. Right. I mean, you look at the rise and fall of the market. Yeah. What is that? That is based on collective consciousness. Yeah. Even when it's really high and you're like, why is it really high? Why these valuations are so stupid? You saw that in 2000, right? With some of these, I remember the Super Bowl commercials for some of these companies, these online companies that were not companies at all, were getting $1 billion, and collective consciousness absolutely does. And I was actually reading Eric Butterworth at the very beginning of this, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no possible way. All right. Yeah. San Francisco, Seattle. Okay. Whatever. California, they'll shut down because their default is kind of authoritarianism, right? When there's no way they'll shut down South Carolina. And when they shut down South Carolina, not my biggest issue. One of the biggest issues with this is, now you've set the precedent that people are conditioned to be told to stay home and do it.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous, because as it is, we already live in a compliance and permission-based society, which has many, many problems beyond stay-at-home orders. I mean, it has to do with people wanting to ask for permission to want to live their life. People want to have to ask permission to want more in their life, to do this, that, and the other thing. This is going to make it even worse. And I think there are people who are going to default even further to compliance, and those who are, listen, my wife and I are people, and I'm not doing this to judge, but if you put a fucking piece of tape on the floor to tell me where to stand in a grocery market, I ain't standing on that tape. You know why? Because if someone gets too close to me, I have the choice to back up. You know what I mean? And so the personal responsibility is lost.
Yes.
And you may say, if I go to the beach and I sit down, I know statistically, because I've looked at numbers, I'm in incredible health. I have no underlying conditions. My kids are in incredible health. And by the way, are of the age that statistically they're more likely to get struck by lightning, on Mars, right?
Hey, it could happen.
It could happen, right? Yeah. Okay. So you may say, right, now if someone who sits next to you is healthy, that's fine. But what if that person who's healthy who sits next to you then goes and has dinner with someone who has an underlying health condition? I said, no matter how far you stretch this out, personal responsibility still comes in, because right now, if I have an underlying health condition and I'm 75 years old, I should not be having lunch with anyone who I think has been contaminated.
Right.
And so because we don't want to be mean to certain people and tell only them to stay home, everyone has to stay home.
Yeah.
And people are really going to learn here soon about where money comes from. They're going to learn about, simple things like supply chains. Now, I think there's enough states that are getting their act together that we're going to avoid this. I'm in a state where South Carolina, Florida, Georgia.
So unfortunately, we don't even have the time to really open the door all the way on the personal responsibility part of the discussion. And I wish I would have thought to get to that earlier, because that's a huge piece, right? None of the fear mongering, none of the stay at home sort of self-righteous, I'll suffer so that nobody dies kind of mentality takes into account, look, if you don't feel safe, here are common sense protocols you can follow as an individual.
Right. Yep.
What the hell happened to that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I didn't have a hard stop, I would love to continue this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Man, this has been fantastic for me. It's been cathartic almost, really, if I'm being honest. I really, really appreciate you coming on, and let's give the gratuitous, where can we find CURT and learn more what he's about?
Yeah. If you want to find me, you can go to merc.enterprises or freedommedianetwork.com. We got a lot of great interviews there, content designed to spur critical thinking.
Yeah.
And that's going to be growing, and some stuff may piss you off, some stuff may not, but
that's okay, because we're all grown.
Exactly.
To quote Vince Vaughn in Swingers, we're all grown up and we're all grown up and we're all grown up, baby. Like, you can handle it. You're not made of glass. You're not going to break from a dissenting opinion.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. I agree.
Man, dude, so good.
Thank you. I pleasure to come on. I'm glad my internet came back. I'm glad my house didn't blow down. Glad I could be here to be on here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so am I. That was outstanding. You and I will be in touch more for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.
Take care.